It is time to focus on one of my favourite tier 9 tanks in the game, period, and that is the M103. This is a tank that many get wrong, but it was definitely one that you should never underestimate, and that is because this tier 9 heavy tank from the American line is amazing, and it has pretty much every single characteristic of a heavy tank that you will want. It has somewhat of a decent amount of armour. There are some problems with it, we'll get into that during this video, but I really want to showcase it to you guys because I feel like a lot of the times everyone's going towards the new heavy tanks, the 60 TPs, you know, all of the new Czechoslovakian tanks, the VZ55, etc. But they always forget about the M103. But the M103 is a solid heavy, and it is one of the first tanks that I probably went for the third mark on because back in the day, probably like 6 years ago now, I went to try and 3 mark all of the tier 9 heavies. I did successfully manage to do that, but remember when I did try and do it, there are a lot less tier 9 heavies. At the moment I haven't managed to carry on that tradition, but nonetheless, what we're going to see here is what the M103 can do in the right sort of scenario, and this is an amazing replay. I kind of get outshone actually but the end of this battle, but we really do try our best to kind of win. And you're seeing here now the WZ132A, which is always the position that counters this one. So if you've ever played Sand River and you're not really sure what you need to do, this position is amazing, but when the enemy team end up coming into that position up there, it can be really annoying, and they can definitely counter this position, which then drives you down into the valley area below, and if you manage to be driven down there, then it's not particularly amazing because you then end up against the tank destroyers who are camping on the hill, but nonetheless we're going after these boys that are trying to push on the kind of southern side of the map through the sand dunes. So you've got to keep your eye out when playing in this sort of area, especially if you're playing in a heavy tank, and you also need to know that sometimes you actually do have to move, you have to go forward, and with a terrible shot there, really could have done with hitting the T95 Chieftain there, one of the better tanks within the game. You're now seeing them kind of push forward. I'm trying to just get a shot into the cupola of the Chieftain, but don't manage to get it. We'll be seeing the Chieftain later on in this game, I can assure you of that. But what we'll have here is 1,200 damage. We've managed to hit 3 shells, and this is what I love about the M103, is because it seems like you're going to have a long reload, but actually the reload in the M103 is about 6 seconds to deal 400 alpha, which is super nice. Well, it's 7 seconds there that you can see, but regardless, it's really short for a heavy tank, and you can definitely position yourself quite nicely in the M103 to be able to utilise it effectively so we can kind of push forward and do what we need to. Now, in this replay, I kind of played a little bit too passively at the beginning, but I wanted to make sure that we kind of decide upon what the best course of action is and then deal with everyone that we need to. So we spot the Tiger 2, who's kind of sat out in the open. We've got the T95 that we need to be aware of, and at this point it's I'm kind of thinking, well, the T95 appears like he's going to be winning that flank, so I need to move and get myself into a position where I'm not going to be getting caught in a crossfire, because a lot of the times if you stay in that position that we were in, you'll be getting hit really easily from the side or the rear or whatever. And although we get hit by the Tiger 2, who's been sat in the kind of town area, we do manage to flick a shot onto him because, you know, armour and everything like that. Having some terrible aim recently. Now, I have been having terrible internet, as I'm sure many of you know, but it kind of adds to it, and you then got to decide against the delay, so it's a pain. I'm not going to blame it on that all entirely, but yeah, it's definitely super annoying for trying to consistently deal damage. But nonetheless, we've got Tiger 2, who is sat out in the open. We're giving a little bit of a wiggle. You see me moving my hull armour whilst we're in the actual view, just to make it a little bit harder for the Tiger 2 to hit us, which is nice. Sort of things you can do yourself to actually boost up your kind of effective armour and stuff like that, so I really do recommend you do that. We've now got a T110E4, and we've also got those tanks over there that need to be dealt with within this replay. So we picked up 2,500 damage, and also managing to pick up quite a nice amount of assistance as well, nearly 1,000 damage of assistance. That's what you really want to be going for in these sorts of matchups. Now the Ragnarok over there, he looks like he needs to be taken out. We've got the T110E4 that we narrowly missed the turret armour, and actually the Tiger II actually manages to hit the weak point of this vehicle, which is the top of the turret. The top of the turret of the M103, it does have some bad weaknesses, and that is because it effectively has like super paper thin armor at the turret, so even if people don't have the kind of a nice shot on it, they can still overmatch the top of the turret, which is really annoying. But you're seeing here a nice 6 versus 3. We've picked up nearly 4,000 damage within this result, which is good. But we have only got 1,285 hit points left, and there's still a decent chunk of hit points on the enemy team that we definitely need to help out with. Now we hit the Object 257, finish him off, get one gun out of the game, and then we can focus on the rest of them. Now the T95 is a tank that you definitely don't want to be going alone against, especially if you're playing in something like a tank destroyer. As you're seeing our friendly tank destroyer move in towards him. I highly wouldn't recommend it, but we do try and land a shot into the T95. We luckily bounce off of the turret armor there, so a little bit of luck going our way, but nonetheless we kind of need to get rid of the T90 or the T54E1, which is the autoloader. If I can deal with him, then that'll be good. I wasn't sure if he's still reloading, so we go down and unfortunately we take 2 shells. We're going to hopefully bounce that second one or third one, which we do, and then it's time to finish off the T54. But you know, as usual, managed to only deal damage to the kind of well, we don't deal with damage at all. Now it's time to go after this T95 that's been causing a riot on this flank, and with 4,600 damage I'm feeling pretty confident. We've got 4 tanks left alive. Hopefully we all don't go in one by one, and there goes the first tank, the T57 Heavy. Now, this T95 obviously is a decent player. He's got 2 marks from what I could see there, maybe even 3 at the time. But you can definitely see me playing a little bit more passively. And at this point, we've got the T95E6, which is our friendly going in. I'm not sure as to what this T95 is doing. I don't want to get caught out right in the open, but equally, I don't want my team to push in too far and too aggressively to be pointing in a one-shot in a tank that you definitely don't want to be facing all alone. The T95 then, what he should have done is pulled right down the ridgeline to the point where the enemy T95 would have had to come right over the ridgeline to deal damage to him. Unfortunately, he goes right on the crest of the ridge, which means we don't even get to shoot the T95 as kind of a trading kind of compromise, but nonetheless, we're now going to go after this guy. We've got 7 rounds left, and it's also a time where we really do need to kind of focus. I try and hit the T95 with that round there, but unfortunately it doesn't work out all too well. The T95 does in fact have 3 marks, which is not good at all. And now it is a terrible scenario because ultimately I have, I'm a one-shot. I've also not got the best kind of armor either from this point. And yeah, it's actually a point in which on World of Tanks where I feel like I actually got outplayed quite badly. And yeah, maybe I shouldn't have pushed in. Maybe I should have pushed right up to begin with, but nonetheless we get taken out. And it is unfortunate for the game itself, but to be fair, this bloke had done 9,354 damage, 8 kills and 2,051 base experience in a tier 10 heavy, which, yeah, just outshone me completely, taking on the 1 versus 4 at the end of the game, which, albeit we were a one-shot or very close to, yeah, a really good game. I was gutted I couldn't actually take that one out and win it, but yeah, fair play to Temp847930, who had an outstanding game, but shone me up. The next gameplay we have is on Himmelsdorf. And this one should be a little more kind of rewarding at the end, so we'll see how well we can perform in the kind of traditional map that you'd expect, a heavy tank map in the form of Himmelsdorf. You know, you can play pretty well and you can do all of the things that you need to, especially with the gun depression that you get on this tank. It's pretty flexible. The M103 is definitely not one of those that you have to worry all too much when pushing forward, because the M103 has that flexibility. It has the fairly decent speed. It is no E100 or, you know, some of the slower super heavies, but it also has the kind of accuracy and the DPM to make it kind of effective when you're coming up against medium tanks and stuff like that, so you don't really have to worry all too much in that regard. But at this point we are wanting to go potentially up the hill, but As always, you have to be very careful when you realise that in the bottom right hand corner where the map is, that there is absolutely no one coming in support other than this TD, who I think got the memo and actually decided, no, we're going to go in a different direction as well, because there's no point in capturing one area of the map at this point. I've made my decision. I am going to push heavily and hard down the banana alley, which is straight ahead of us. If we can push through there, then we can get behind some of the tanks that will be causing some resistance to the people on the left, and also then we can deal with the people that have come down the hill and potentially done some damage there. But at this point, I'm seeing all of the kind of people just basically sat around not doing anything, the 60 TP being a bit passive. So at this point, I'm just trying to push forward and kind of do some impact early enough so that we aren't too late, and then we get sausage sandwich from the people behind as well as these people in front. The enemies are probably not thinking that we'll be super aggressive at this point, so we're going to come in from behind this Object 277, and with the DPM hopefully we'll be able to kind of consistently deal damage on him, but we can take out the double pumper because the TNH is very deadly and can quickly remove your hit points, but his hit points have been quickly removed nonetheless. And we're going for the upper plate of the Object 277, failing miserably here. I would highly recommend you actually just rush heavily into this guy. Try and go for it again, but as we say, the Object 277's armor's actually working, and this is why I love the 277. Similarly to the M103, it's very flexible and has the armor potentially to bounce a few rounds, as well as having the 440 alpha and just basically all of the benefits of being a Soviet tank in the game. Now, we do start punishing him. Have to be careful with the Minotaur, who's actually up on top of the hill, because yes, that tank can be actually pretty annoying because the DPM of it is not too bad at all. Now we try and go for the shell, albeit terrible shell aim there. Should have gone for the lower plate looking up into it, but nonetheless we did have a limited shot. But we'll wait here now for the Minotaur to actually, or the Minotaur to actually come out. He then goes there, kind of forward, and then at this point we're just going to try and farm him down. Now there's people in the cap circle, 37 seconds left on the cap, which is not good. And with 10 and 8, we don't know who's where, or what's coming. There could be someone coming straight towards us from kind of just to the right of the street, coming down the hill. We're not entirely sure, but I do try and put some rounds into the Minotauro. But at this point, I now decided that the cap circle is super critical at this point. I knew that my team were kind of pushing back to the cap circle, and it was unlikely that they're going to be able to cap us out. So I wasn't all too worried, although, you know, in a different map and a different situation, maybe I would have turned back sooner to deal with them. But nonetheless, picking up 1,600 damage so far, and that will increase as we go through this battle. And it kind of shows you a little bit about the M103 is that hope is not lost straight away when playing this tank. You don't have to worry about maybe feeling like you haven't done enough at the beginning, because you can make it up with a vehicle because of that DPM and all of the benefits that you get from that. Now we have some terrible driving here, as we as I always do in the game, but yeah, now we've just got to push forward. I know that this one tank here is probably not going to be able to do anything against him, but we can push towards the tanks that are going to be on the hill area. And you can always feel really confident when playing the M103 because you have things like the HMH M51, which is the Super Sherman. That tank is not going to be able to really reliably do too much to us. And with the accuracy of this tank, since we're not going super fast, the bloom is not super big, which means we can hit on the move. And that's what I love about the American heavies compared to some of the other heavies in the game. You think of a IS-7, it is so much harder to hit on the move than in a tank where you can pretty much hit everything on the move with this. So there's kind of that benefit to playing the American heavy tanks. Yes, you do sacrifice some of the armor comparatively, but you can still push forward and be a nuisance to the enemy team. The FV4202, he's kind of moved up, but we'll just focus on the Super Sherman, hitting him in the engine and actually setting him on fire, and we go for the next shell on him. We've then got two heavy tanks that are going to be sat on top of this hill, and maybe we'll get some revenge back on that Minotaur who actually hit us earlier in the game. And I love being able to punish tanks super hard in the M103, which is kind of why I enjoy playing it. You do get punished quite badly if you kind of play on your own. It's not a tank that does particularly well if you are having to side scrape either. So in a traditional heavy tank sense, it's probably not your favourite. So you're more of a support heavy to the point where maybe you take a Maus and you're in the M103 and then you kind of push forward, use their kind of armor to hopefully bounce a few rounds whilst you consistently deal damage to the opponents. But you can see here just trying to go for the cupola of the Minotaur here, try and evade that shell because I know he's going to come out, but we don't manage to do that and we can just push forward. Of course, the one where you auto aim, I literally knew that that was going to be the case, manages to pen. But nonetheless, a pretty easy game in the M103, just kind of strolling around, dealing 4,500 damage, and very nicely indeed. And I really do enjoy this tank. I think it's a super underrated tank, and I highly recommend you jump into it, give it a go, test it out, see what the tank leading up to it are like, because the T29 is amazing, the T32 is great, the M103 is great, and then you come on to the T125, which I think is actually really good, solid heavy tank at tier 10. So there we go. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video where we look at the M103. If you want to check out loads of other gameplays, we've got tons on the channel under the gameplay and tank reviews playlist on screen right now. On the left hand side, however, we have the latest update news for this week on World of Tanks, and as we go forward it will just be the most recent video we've uploaded. So thank you very much and I'll see you there. Goodbye.